Hey, good morning, everybody. Thursday, April 23rd. Looks like a sunny start to the day, although yesterday was sunny too, and it was cold. Anyway, reminder, kind of a big ticket thing. Don't forget that for anyone looking to reassess the myth making summative or the foreign affairs unit test, those are posted last Friday, the 17th, in Google Classroom. If you're interested in doing any of those, they're right there. Just let me know that you plan on doing it, and then I will expect those. Due date is actually tomorrow, so not a lot of time, but at least you do have some. All I want to do today is go over the correct answers to the crossword puzzle that I gave you on Tuesday, due today, and then show you the quiz that is today, as well as some additional information as well. All right, let me move myself. And let's take a look at the correct answers here. Number 4 across, bleeding, that would be Kansas. In the 1850s, Kansas, a free territory, was pressured by both pro-slavery and anti-slavery people, so lots of violence took place there. 5 across, what type of writing did Frederick Douglass create? That would be an autobiography, right? Frederick Douglass freed himself from slavery at the age of 20. And then was able to give people a first-person account about his experiences through an autobiography. Number 10, Matilda Cage was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, so 10 across, Underground Railroad. Just a reminder that the Underground Railroad was not an actual railroad. I have had more than one student over the years who think it's some sort of like subway-like thing that, takes you all the way to Canada. No, it is a series of houses and safe houses and wagons and anything you can do to get from one place to the other to get out of the South, and then eventually in the 1850s to get all the way to Canada to safety. 12 across, where are we here? Last name of leader in both the abolition movement and women's rights, that would be Anthony, as in Susan B. Anthony. That was very common. Other women of that time, as women's rights were starting to come into focus, especially in 1848 Seneca Falls Conference, which we'll talk about next week. They were, because the idea of what's the saying? A rising tide helps all boats. So the idea of helping for the rights of one might lead to the rights of others. 13 across, last name, the abolitionist was born into slavery. That would be Truth, Sojourner Truth. That was a name, a self-given name. A sojourn is like a long journey that people take. And 14 across, the Liberator, an anti-slavery newspaper started by William Lloyd Garrison. He was born in Newburyport, not too far from Epping. 1 down, anti-slavery novel written by Harriet Beecher Stowe. That would be Uncle Tom's Cabin. I've read somewhere that Uncle Tom's Cabin was the best-selling fictional novel of the 1800s, which is sort of interesting, but it also speaks to how influential it must have been. We talked about how Thomas Paine's Common Sense sold a lot of copies when it was published in 1776, and it was influential. Well, same thing here. It's just a few hundred pages longer. 2 down, a desire for slavery was linked to the cultivation of this crop. That would be cotton. 3 down, unlike most abolitionists, he felt violence needed to be met with violence. That would be John Brown. So 3 down, John Brown. Or is it just asking for the whole name? Yeah, whole name. His method of abolition was different than normal. Not to say that he was the only one who favored violence, but most abolitionists, if you are going to impress upon people that the violence of slavery is wrong, well, you might not exactly convince people by engaging in slavery. However, John Brown felt that in order to end slavery, you had to make slave owners fear for their own lives, and that included taking the lives of some slave owners. So while others gave speeches and tried to pass legislation and wrote newspapers and wrote pamphlets and wrote novels, John Brown decided to cut out the middleman, both literally and figuratively. Let's see. 6 down, Frederick Douglass questioned the legitimacy of this. That would be the 4th of July. 7 down, John Brown died before the Civil War. That's why the painting is called Tragic Prelude. He died in 1859. But so the painting is not historically accurate, of course, but it lets people know there's a line from well, there's many versions of the song John Brown's Body, but one of the lines is the conflict that he heralded. He looks from heaven to view. I think I'm doing that by memory, but the idea is that he let people know the Civil War was coming, even though he was not alive for it. 8 I just mentioned. The painting is called Tragic Prelude. You can see that on both lesson 4 and lesson 5. And 9 down, no day ever dawns for the slave, nor is it looked for. For the slave, it is all night forever. So that day, as the morning sun comes into my sun porch here, dawn, it brings a sense of light and hope and opportunity, metaphorically, but for the slave, that did not exist. All right, I'm going to switch tabs to the quiz now, so just give me a minute here. All right, I'm back. Quiz here, similar to ones you've had many times before. 8 questions. Some of them, this one, number 5, includes a picture. That's unusual, so I'm sure you can handle that. Please read the questions in their entirety. A reminder that these are open resources. Highlight your correct answer. So if you need to go back to lesson 1 or lesson 2, or you think you'd be better off Googling something, hey, give it a try. Okay. Not like we would normally do it in class, but we're not normally in class now, are we? So anyway, get that done for tomorrow morning so I can grade those over the weekend and give some feedback. And the other thing that I included, and I make very clear that the following links do not have to be done or looked at. But these are from Eyewitness to History, a site that we've used a few times when we talked about the poor medical care back in the was it 1750s, I guess, 1760s. We actually used Eyewitness History. We've used it a few times in here. So taking primary sources of when slavery existed. So they're a couple pages long, but like I said, if you want a little bit more information in depth, one of the things that I think is important for people to understand when they talk about slavery is, sometimes we use the word slaves so easily, and we forget that there's actually human beings behind that word, right? So sometimes in class, which we're not in, but hopefully when I do these videos, I'll say people who were enslaved, instead of just using the word slaves all the time, because I feel like if we just say slave, sometimes we forget, we take away the humanity of them, and we forget that these are people who were fathers and mothers and daughters and cousins and aunts, and sometimes those relationships were taken from them. These were people who originally were kidnapped, right? We don't just say oh, these were people who were brought from Africa. No, these are people who were kidnapped from Africa. So just to try to add some humanity to it, so we don't just use the word slaves and talk about the millions of slaves and the slaves who worked on the plantation. Let's not forget that these are actual people. So I think sometimes primary sources, especially from the point of view of the actual person themselves, so whether it's Frederick Douglass's autobiography, or in this case, Lizzie Keekly's memoir, where she's reflecting upon her time as a slave, obviously 1868, so slavery was over. But I think that those can help hammer home the point. So I don't have any assignments tied to these, but like I said, if you wanted to read a little bit more about it, then I wanted to make those available to you. All right, have a wonderful weekend once you finish up that quiz. Any questions, concerns, comments, feel free to reach out to me. And don't forget that if you're interested in reassessing either the myth-making summative or the foreign affairs test, that all you got to do is shoot me an email, let me know that you're interested in doing that, and then hopefully I will see it turned in by Friday. And if you need a little bit more time, hey, listen, I'm a reasonable person, so just reach out. All right, everybody, have a great day. I will talk to you later.